Inside a prison, a man named Ray is having a phone conversation with his friend, who happens to be a radio host. Their chat is suddenly interrupted when another inmate, a man he doesn't recognize, starts mocking him from nearby. Offended, Ray loses his temper and physically attacks the man until the confrontation ends with the stranger unconscious. After completing his 7-year sentence, Ray is finally released. Before stepping out, he hands over his reading materials to one of the guards. Standing outside the prison gate, he asks the guard what most former inmates do once they're free. The guard casually replies that many of them end up doing something foolish again. Not long after, Ray meets his old partner, LaRue, who wastes no time trying to pull him back into a life of crime. LaRue suggests robbing a bank, just like they did years ago, and even tries to drag Ray into his car to convince him. At first, Ray ignores him and keeps walking, but then he abruptly changes his mind and gets in. However, instead of helping LaRue, Ray takes control of the car and drives off, leaving his old partner behind. That night, Ray sits alone, staring at a photograph of his wife and daughter. The picture fills him with longing and determination. He dreams of starting over, becoming a better man, and leaving behind his reckless past so he can finally be the husband and father his family deserves. The next day, Ray visits his wife, Lynn, and their daughter, Sally, at their home. But the reunion doesn't go as he hopes. Lynn greets him coldly and tells him she doesn't want to see him again. To her, Ray is still the same irresponsible man who once broke their trust. Despite his intentions, he has yet to prove that he can truly be a dependable husband and father. Not long after returning home from school, Sally sees Ray standing at the entrance. She feels disturbed by his presence and still cannot accept him back. She quickly rushes into the house after rejecting the teddy bear Ray offers her. Sally remains disappointed with Ray's behavior and cannot forgive his actions. The next day, Ray apologizes to Sally at her school, hoping she will accept him again. Unfortunately, Sally finds it hard to trust Ray's words, and as a result, she walks away from him without hesitation. He tries to explain that he has changed for the better and that he will keep trying to stay by her side. Soon after, unexpectedly, he hears the sound of firecrackers coming from a different direction. A group of students is seen fighting and causing a commotion in the school hallway. After quickly breaking up the two boys, Ray hands them over to the principal without delay. Mrs. Miller, who is Sally's homeroom teacher, calls him shortly afterward. Mrs. Miller invites him to join a museum field trip next week, offering him the chance to act as a chaperone. To increase the chance of getting closer to his daughter, Ray, who at that time has no other plans, immediately accepts the offer. After hearing this, Sally becomes annoyed and walks away from him. LaRue visits Ray at his apartment that night to talk with him. If Ray decides to join the upcoming bank robbery in a few days, LaRue promises not to report Ray for car theft. In response to his anger, Ray immediately refuses LaRue's request. This is because he feels upset over LaRue's betrayal, which caused him to be imprisoned for several years. On the contrary, LaRue insists on bringing him into the crew. This annoys and angers Ray so much that he nearly beats up LaRue. To visit Lynn and Sally, Ray returns to his wife's house the next day, but he faces the same rejection as before. It is even harder for him to accept the reality that his wife kisses another man in front of him. There is clear evidence that Lynn has moved on from Ray and is now in a relationship with someone else. Since she and their daughter have changed their minds about being with him, she asks Ray to leave. But Ray doesn't give up and tries to convince his wife that he will make their lives more joyful. Considering his current situation, including having no job and no money, Lynn continues to express her belief that Ray will never be able to change their lives. Ray decides to look for a job at several places after realizing that he must quickly earn money for his family. But the fact that he has a criminal record makes it difficult for him to get hired. After reviewing his applications, several offices rejected him right away because of his criminal past. Even after spending a whole day looking for work, Ray still doesn't have a job. A fire has destroyed his apartment, which complicates the situation even more. Finally, that night, Ray, who begins to lose hope, decides to join LaRue's crew that is preparing to rob a bank. The next day, LaRue, Ray, and two others start their plan to rob a major bank branch. LaRue tells Ray to stay in the car while they rob the bank. Sally and her classmates are on their way to the museum for a study tour when Ray happens to see them. He is still waiting in the car at that moment. He remembers the beautiful days he and Sally spent together when they could still spend time together. With all these memories, Ray realizes that what he is doing now is very foolish. If he continues with the crime, he risks going back to prison for many years and being separated from Sally for a long time. So this new realization makes Ray cancel his plan to help with the robbery and throw the car keys into the bushes. After that, Ray gets on the bus that the kids are riding and joins them for the museum trip, where they visit a dinosaur exhibit. When Sally sees Ray get on the bus, she tries to ask him to get off, but Ray chooses to ignore her and stays on board. Meanwhile, LaRue and his men manage to secure the money, so they waste no time getting into the vehicle. But when they enter the vehicle, they find that Ray is gone and the keys are missing. Before the authorities can recover the stolen money, LaRue escapes in a hurry. Unfortunately, LaRue's partner, let's call him John, loses contact with them and drops the money bag in the middle of the students' backpacks at the school. As soon as John senses the start of danger, he immediately runs away, leaving the bag behind with the students' bags. LaRue and his men express frustration and dissatisfaction after seeing this happen. The need to flee quickly and hide from the authorities prevents them from taking any significant action. Amid the chaos, John, who has been avoiding the police, unexpectedly gets into a vehicle accident and ends up in the hospital. To intercept the school bus carrying the stolen money, LaRue and his crew steal a car. But due to an unfortunate accident and a collision with the vehicle in front of them, they fail to stay on course, so they hijack another car ahead to continue the chase. Sometime later, the authorities interrogate John, who regains consciousness in the hospital, to gather information about everyone involved in the bank robbery. During the interrogation, the police learn that the stolen money is inside a school bus parked next to the bank. Along the way, LaRue pretends to ask something of the school principal and manages to obtain the information that the bus is heading to a museum. Ray and the students arrive at the dinosaur museum after traveling for several hours. Upon learning that the original tour guide is sick, Ray quickly seizes the opportunity to take over as the group's guide. His extensive reading during his imprisonment has equipped him with broad knowledge about dinosaurs. After a while, Ray notices that LaRue and his men have arrived at the museum. As a result, he instructs the students to return to the school bus as quickly as possible. Meanwhile, Ray lures LaRue and his men into the restroom, planning to take them out. He tries to explain that he has no interest in taking part in their business. Then, LaRue tells him that the money they took is now on the school bus, and they ask him to retrieve it. But before checking the bag, Ray gets on the school bus and drives the students to their next study tour location. Once Ray arrives at the destination, he rummages through the luggage compartment to find the bag containing the stolen bank money. He intends to give the stolen money to LaRue because he knows that if he doesn't, LaRue will hurt his daughter. LaRue and his men prepare to collect the money, but the unexpected arrival of the police forces them to flee before getting caught. After evading the authorities, they encounter 3 members of the Mexican mafia and approach them for help in capturing Ray. Ray and the students visit a hotel in the afternoon where they plan to stay for a while. He quickly takes the stolen money bag and brings it into his room. Then, Ray contacts LaRue, asking him to come pick up the stolen money at the hotel. However, LaRue refuses, saying the area is too crowded and risky. So he asks Ray to deliver the money to a safer, hidden location. Before meeting LaRue, Ray takes the opportunity to spend time with Sally. After taking her out to eat at a restaurant, he brings her to a music store where she buys her favorite cassette. At the same time, a group of investigators arrives at the hotel where the students are staying and interviews Mrs. Miller to ask about Ray's whereabouts. A few hours later, while preparing to return to the hotel, Ray sees law enforcement officers walking in front of the hotel. Suddenly, he realizes that he has become a target. Then, he tells Sally the truth about what happened and asks her to retrieve the bag from his room. After she gets the bag, Ray quickly tells her to return to the hotel and meet the other students. Since LaRue and his crew are still on the loose, he doesn't want Sally to be in danger. Unfortunately, LaRue and his men have already captured and kidnapped Sally as she approaches the hotel. Members of the Mexican mafia ambush Ray as soon as he arrives at the location LaRue specified, putting him in serious danger. Fortunately, he manages to defeat the mafia members one by one with ease, thanks to his fighting skills. Ray receives a phone call from LaRue shortly after, where LaRue tells him that he has kidnapped Sally. Upon hearing this, Ray becomes filled with rage and warns LaRue not to harm her. Then, LaRue commands him to return the stolen money to a hidden location to finalize the deal. Ray takes a taxi and arrives at the place LaRue directed, not long after. As soon as Sally enters the taxi, she asks the driver to go immediately before she herself gets out of the vehicle. Sally successfully returns to the hotel after escaping. However, she realizes that her father is in danger, and as a solution, she decides to search for and help him. She approaches 3 of her male classmates to ask for assistance. One of the students, who is skilled with computers, tracks Ray's location using his gadget and information from Sally. After that, another student tries to distract the authorities by lighting firecrackers, hoping to lure them away from the hotel. After tricking the driver, Sally plans to drive the bus herself, since her father once taught her to drive a car, and she feels confident she can drive a bus too. So she uses the bus to reach Ray faster. Meanwhile, LaRue and his men hold Ray hostage because he tricks them by giving him a fake bag filled with clothes. It turns out that earlier, before Sally gives the bag to Ray, she meets the bus driver who is loading many bags into the storage compartment, on instructions from Mrs. Miller, after seeing news reports about the police searching for Ray. When the driver sees Sally carrying a bag, he puts it in the luggage compartment. So, Sally asks for it back, but the driver hands her the wrong one, and Sally fails to notice. Now, to force Ray to reveal the location of the stolen money, LaRue repeatedly beats him. But Ray refuses to speak and does not communicate in any way. Sally and her friends arrive at the location where Ray is being held, not long after, and they quickly spread out to take down LaRue and his men. Ray tries to contact a friend who works as a radio host at the same time. Thanks to that broadcast, the authorities are finally able to locate him. LaRue, unaware that their conversation is being recorded at that moment, openly confesses that Ray is truly innocent and that he is only trying to take advantage of him during the entire scheme. At the same moment, law enforcement officers arrive at the scene, and finally, LaRue and his accomplices get arrested. Ray's presence on the bus with the students during the crime makes him legally innocent. Lynn arrives shortly afterward to check on Sally and make sure she is safe. The Chaperone movie ends with Ray proving to his wife that he has grown into a better person, becomes someone his wife can depend on, and finally, they live happily ever after. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notification so you don't miss the latest recaps.